We have also done some bit of work globally. We've done promotion of brands to the US market for Asian teas. We've also done some work for exporting tea from the Latin America to Europe. And we've also done some work in Southern Africa. And this was a program that was being spearheaded by Joseph Kamanu, who is somewhere here, in Malawi, Mozambique. And we've done some work with the associations in Asia. So we can do the same for Uganda. Now, this is the business case I've talked about. Kayonza has about 8,000 farmers, and this means that they planted tea, and then they had a challenge of processing capacity. So the government of Uganda did a financing package for one line, and now Solidaridad has worked with the management of Kayonza and UNDP to do a new factory to focus on high-grade teas, because there is potential for that factory. And also there is a story. We are creating space for women and also attracting youth, engaging youth through digital options. And also this particular factory is near the gorillas in Kanungu. These are some of the certifications I was talking about. We have operated in the space of soy. So that is the round table for responsible soy. The other one is Soy Plus. This one is BCI on cotton, and Abrapa is also on cotton. So it's about better quality, traceability, commitment, ethics, and linkage to research. We've also done responsible palm oil, a round table, but now we are looking, the thinking of the actors is that sometimes the entry points of the fees for the owners of the labels and also the cost of implementing compliance is actually a barrier. So we are looking at lower level frameworks that can be linked to the higher level frameworks that you can call third party. So this is happening in Asia. And at this time, I would like to call my colleague Ranjan to talk about the last initiative that we can promote in Uganda and elsewhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julius. How do you read this? This one? Okay. Yeah. So recently in India, we launched something called Trinity, which is a program directed purely for the smallholders. Earlier, before this, we had programs in association with big packers like Unilever, Tata Global Beverages, and another Western India packer called Wagbakri. Some of you may have heard about a program called Trusty. So we exited Trusty in 2018, towards the end of 2018. And now we've launched this program with a focus on smallholders. As some of you may be knowing that in India today, almost 50% of the tea, the national production, is coming from smallholders. So there's a huge shift. And this has been largely, what's the word? It hasn't been a regulated sector so far. So it's been very informal. So we believe that there is a huge scope to address risks over here. So with that being said, on the 4th of April, we launched this program called Trinity. So Trinity is basically, it's to create awareness amongst small tea growers on good agricultural practices. It works on a self-assurance model, which we've tried and tested, as Julia showed, in South America, in both in soy and in cotton. It works. This program will also monitor quality of green leaf supplied it will have a large focus on traceability. Then there will be elements of vendor development for supply of farming products. Then it will create self-help groups which will then be able to participate in programs and schemes that are available to them from the government. I think this is running on. So it's basically has a lot of digital infusion in it. So Trinity is a producers, will also be a self-assessment digital tool which will provide tailor-made extension services and solutions to the tea smallholder, focused on improved quality, better yields, and food safety. The control points in the Trinity program are basically culled from all the best sustainability standards that are prevalent and are in existence in the world today. So it addresses all those issues. So it's locally developed, owned, and globally owned. It's locally owned, and the sustainable assurance tailor-made is at the moment purely for Indian conditions. It factors in all Indian realities. We believe that this is a model which we could pilot in Uganda with a little tweaking that may be required. Ultimately, the idea over here is to promote high quality teas, and like our earlier programs were largely domestic focused, with Trinity we want to go global. We plan to have events every year internationally to market this tea of smallholders in these events. So that's in short what Trinity is about, and we do believe there's a lot of scope for working that in Uganda. Thank you.
Could we give them a round of applause, the Sodat team, for the presentation? Thank you. We go to the next presenter as per the program, improving market access for East African tea through enhancing the export competitiveness of SMEs, supply assessment, and demand assessment. The presenter, Mr. Joseph Kaman, is a tea professional in Eastern, Central, and Southern Africa region with over 30 years of experience. He's currently working as an international consultant for the ITC, International Trade Center, a joint board of UN and World Tea Organization, as the regional tea expert in the markup program. He has worked in 11 countries: Burundi, DR Congo, Ethiopia, Kenya, Malawi, Mozambique, Rwanda, South Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zimbabwe, covering the tea value chain. He has made a number of publications. He is a food scientist with Masters of Food Science and Technology from the University of Nairobi. He is also qualified in business management, climate expert, food safety team leader, auditor trainer, accredited with Kenya National Accreditation Service, and a lead assessor in environment impact assessment, environmental audit, accredited to National Environment Management Authority. Could you join me to welcome Mr. Joseph Kamanu for the presentation?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to all the participants for this opportunity to make this presentation. I want to recognize the presence of the National Coordinator for the Banker Program, Anche Koech. She's here with where you are. She was to present the first part of the program, but because of time, we are just going to pass through it. And because we also want our colleague, Angela, who will be joining in the next part of the presentation. would want to give more time to Ajara. So I think we go straight into the presentation. Let's get the presentation. Maybe as it is coming, I introduce you to ITC, International Trade Center. As we've said, it's a joint body of the United Nations and World Trade Organization. It was established 40 years ago with the aim of working with the private sector in order to internalize business. And we particularly work we're still waiting for, okay, it's coming now. So we particularly work with small and medium enterprises in order to bring them into the international business. Then part of what we're doing is that we have a project that we call Market Access Upgrade. In short, backup. This is a program that was established by the East Africa Community Secretariat in Arusha. Is funded by EU, is a 4-year program, and is targeting market development and access for the East Africa community countries, targeting again SMEs, and it has quite many components. It is working in agro-based value chains such as coffee, cocoa, spices, tea and horticulture, particularly avocados. And each of the countries selected the commodities that they want to work with. Tea was selected by 3 countries. And that is Burundi, Kenya and Tanzania. Then for this project, we're working with companies. For example, in terms of tea, we're working with companies. We work through an expression of interest. So companies that are interested will send you a link, and then you can express your interest, and then we can work together in the project. So it's targeting market access and development and value addition, particularly for those commodities, but here we are talking about tea. Now, as part of that project, we've done demand and supply analysis for tea from the region, and we are here to present the findings. Definitely, we're going to just touch on the findings because it's a big document, but we hope that we shall be able to create interest to you such that you can be able to get the report. The report will be in our website, I think from 1st July thereabouts, and then you can be able to peruse, and I'm sure it will be of help to the stakeholders here who are here and others. So if you look at a little bit of the background, based on studies that has been done by ITC, it has been established that the commodities that we mentioned are of economic importance, and they can play a big role in terms of the economics of the countries. However, much work has been done at the farmer level. Therefore, as an organization that deals with trade, we felt it was good time that we now do something at the level of trade. And as I said, hello there. Okay. This thing is not really working well. So the the objectives of the study was just to do a market-led supplier and demand analysis. So supply on this side in the East Africa community, and particularly the three countries that selected tea, that is Burundi, Kenya, and Tanzania. And the aim of the study was to come up with a report, or we come up with recommendations that can be used to feed in the project in order to have the stakeholders' input, in order to address what you as stakeholders would want, but also as well to come up with the recommendations that can be used by the chain actors so that they can also input into their strategies. And the terms of reference are there. I'm not going to pass through them. I'll just now go to how the study was done. So we use the method of the value chain analysis, but also with the 5 steps. You can see them there: desk review, value chain mapping, data collection and analysis, then analysis of challenges and constraints, and then analysis of opportunities. There was also a small component in terms of resource efficiency, so we also did a study of that. And then the final thing is about reporting. Coming to the findings, I'll pass through them quickly so that we can go to the demand side, which I think is has more information and more interesting. This system is slow. I hope we shall manage. Hello. If you had the laptop here, it should be very easy. Now, okay, so part of the what we did was to do a value chain mapping. And we came up with the value chain as put there. And really for this is something that I think we all know, but we found that there are actually 4 types of producers. And also the 4 types of producers have processing facilities. But also we found that all the particularly the 3 types, the smallholders, the independent, and the government, they interchange the green leaf. But the multinationals, they process their own green leaf. Then in terms of the trade, of course, there are the transporters and the warehouse. Then you go to the trade dominated by the warehouse, where the major players are the brokers, the buyers, and the exporters. But we also have 2 other windows, the direct sales, and the factory door sales, and then the tea goes through the normal distribution system all the way to the consumers. The other findings were on the production, as shown there, and we found we traced production for the last 5 years, actually 6 years, 2013 to 2018. What is presented is 2013 to 2017. We didn't have complete data for 2018, but you can see how the trades in production has been for those years for the 3 countries. The Kenya figures have been divided by 10 so as to fit in the graph. But from this graph, we see that the production followed by the sales was going up and down. And this actually can be traced to the weather conditions. We also traced the prices. And this is also what we saw with the prices for the 3 countries, the average prices for the year. And again, the prices, as we know, tended to follow the quantities. We also checked about the grades, and you can see the grade distribution there in terms of the year 2018. And what we found from here, again, you find the way the grades are distributed. But we also found that other than the grades we normally know about the industry, there are incoming grades, which are variants of the grades. For example, you find BP2, PF2, DAS2, BP2 coming from BP, PF2 from PF, and DAS2 from DAS. But what we found about this is that these variants of the normal grades we know is that they are fetching low prices, and therefore this is a pointer to the industry that because it takes just a little effort to promote BP2 to BP, but by so doing you'll find that the average price changes by about 5 US cents. So that little effort will earn you 5 US cents. And the same goes for the other grades. Then we also looked at the international trades for the East Africa tea at the Mombasa auction. I'll try to leave this because we shall be getting about the trades and the preferences from the demand side, which I think is much more of interest. We looked at the strengths and advantages of the tea industry. They are analyzed there. And one of the strengths is that we are able to offer tea all the year round, and therefore the buyers are able to get their quantities from one source. So the others are there, you will be able to read. We also looked at the constraints and challenges, and one of the main constraints was that we found that we are presenting just one type of tea, that is black CTC tea, and in a large volume, and through in unstable quantities year on, and this tends to bring the prices down, giving an opportunity for product diversification to specialty tea. Then we also now looked at the opportunities that are there in the industry. Again, I'll just mention one. The major one was that there was a feeling that the tea quality from the region is coming down. And one of the recommendations was that we need to professionalize tea, the tea business, so that the people who are running the business are credible, are qualified. And it was mentioned that you can go to some factories and find somebody called a tea maker. He doesn't speak English, he doesn't speak Swahili, he doesn't speak the language of the factory. So how is he going to make the tea? He doesn't also know how to taste tea. So how is he going to make tea? What kind of tea is he going to make? So there's a need to professionalize, so that when we say somebody is a tea maker, there are some basic qualifications that somebody should have. We also looked at what the industry can do, and one of the recommendations was about the Africa Free Trade Area. And I was happy this morning to hear the minister who was with us here yesterday was discussing that topic in TV, so it means it's getting government support. And finally, we also gave opportunities that the markup can be able to do, which we are inputting into already the work plan, and then it will be undertaken through markup. A small component of the study was on resource efficiency, where we did benchmarking exercise. We visited the factories. We looked at their data for 2018 on some of the resources that we are using in the factory. And these are some of the findings. We found that there was quite a high variation in terms of utilization indices. For example, if you look at electricity, in 2018, from January to December, you can see the changes. The blue line shows you the trend of made tea in the 10 factories that we did the study. The red line is the best utilization in terms of kgs made tea per kWh. The middle one is the average, while the upper one is the worst. And as you can see already, there is quite a big difference. There is quite a bigger difference between the best and the worst. And this, of course, translates to cost of production, and it translates to how or what price you can offer the product in the market. So the same information is captured in that table for its reference. And that ends my presentation. I hope I've given you enough interest for you to want to lead and implement the analysis findings. I now invite my colleague, Ajra, who will present on the results, the findings of the demand assessment done in Europe. Welcome, Ajra.
Hello everyone, my name's Angela Price. I've been working with the International Trade Centre on the demand analysis for this project. Started earlier this year, and I'm looking at Europe specifically, which this project funds. I'm going to have to be short on time, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but hopefully we'll get more time afterwards for questions. Feel free to catch me outside of the conference. So I looked specifically at Europe, and just to show you as a graph here, Europe is the single largest continent in terms of tea exports, as you're probably aware, taking 30% of global imports. Big importers are within the continent of Russia and UK, and both of which dominate in terms of demand for CTC black tea. What we saw yesterday, and you'll see in today's presentation, is that CTC black tea, particularly in Europe, is on the decline. So when we look at the UK market, our biggest supplier of tea into the UK is Kenya. So when you look at your export numbers into the UK market, you'll be noticing, and we've seen that trend come through in the numbers. When you look at other European markets, over the same period, so since 2008, there are markets that are in growth. So that includes Turkey, up 51%, Poland, up 18%, Germany, up 17%, and Italy, which is also up 13%. However, all of those markets are from a much lower base. Just to show you, no surprises here, but import of tea for consumption, this is 2008 versus 2017. And what we're seeing here is that these are the biggest importing countries. So starting on the far left, Pakistan, followed by Russia, jumping across down to the third largest, which is USA, then UK, Egypt, Morocco. Interestingly is the difference between the bars. So you've got orange bar, which is 2008. 2017 is marked in blue, and we can see the huge demand for imports from Pakistan, the leading importer. But what's of note here is the USA. I think that's particularly worth noting for their increase in imports over this time period. When we look at the trade statistics by type, black tea, of course, is the most popular tea type in Europe, representing over 95% of the market. When you look at it by key European countries, the UK represents the lion's share, followed by Germany, Poland, Netherlands, France, and Ireland. When you break it down by tea type, it's quite telling. So the UK, Ireland and Poland are all traditional tea bag markets. So we drink a lot of black tea in tea bags. And that's shown here in the figures, black tea representing 96% of the UK. When you, another point to note really is the dominance of fruit and herbals within Germany. We'll come on to that. So Germany as a market is quite interesting because the last two columns show you the re-exports from these markets. So Germany is of note because it's considered a tea trading hub. So 50% of what Germany imports, it re-exports, half of which they import comes from China, followed by India and Sri Lanka. So Kenya and East African tea at the moment doesn't feature particularly high up on the German tea import agenda, probably because of the dominance of CTC types. Retail sales, key European markets by category, volume and value. I'm not going to go into the detail on this. I haven't got time right now, but what the most important figure is here is that UK, we're looking at retail sales volume, which is the top chart, showing a minus 10.5% in volume. This is 2013 to 18. When you look at the lower table, we're seeing a value increase, so we're plus 8.6%. So this is really the kind of nutshell of where the market is in Europe. Volumes are down, but value is significantly higher. So I think we've talked about the outlook for tea. I think within Europe, it's definitely a premiumization of the category, and people are paying more for their tea. Retail sales UK, this is a chart which shows you the volume from 2013 to 2018. The bar chart is broken down by tea type. So you've got tea bags black, fruit and herbals in orange, green tea in grey, instant tea, loose black, etc. So we're seeing, of course, the market is dominated by tea bags black, but the volume is declining. It's being driven by declines in ordinary tea bags. So the bottom table shows you that. The bottom table shows 2013 to 18 trend. Ordinary tea bags are down 14%. When you look at the last year, 2017 to 18, down 3.5%. Within the beverage category, it's really green teas we're seeing a huge demand for, so 58% growth in green teas. And also of particular note is fruit and herbals, up 33%. When you see the same chart by value, it gives you an indication that, the bar charts here are showing you the value increase. This is the retail spend by type of tea. So much bigger dominance from the orange category, which is fruit and herbals. Tea bags black, less dominant here. But all in all, the outlook is overall promising for speciality types, where consumers are paying more for those types. By category, it shows you the similar picture, just in a different way. You've got the first two charts as ordinary tea bags, 2017 and 18. Fruit and herbals, 2017 and 18. Green, and then finally loose black tea. Orange is volume, and blue is value. So we can see a huge drop in volume with ordinary tea bags. The UK tea market is pretty saturated. The lion's share of the market is dominated by 5 key brands, the biggest brands I've listed out here. And it's a competitive marketplace. So I would say the last 5 years particularly, there's been a huge amount of innovation in the tea industry within Europe. We're seeing all of the brands here listed, the likes of Twinings, Unilever, Tetley's, Taylor's, Typhoo, having to innovate to survive. And you see where the brands that are succeeding or in growth, it's those brands that are constantly innovating. Those that are not are struggling, I would say. And this shows you the type of products that are being brought to the market. You've got flavoured green teas, you've got a lot of functional blends, so wellness blends. Of note, I would say more recently is cold brew tea, and we'll come on to that. Global consumer trends, I'm going to list just 3 that have fed into this report and the recommendations. The first one being wellness. I think it's a wider trend than just Europe. Within Europe, we're seeing less people drinking alcohol. Generation Z, we talked about trends yesterday and brands and how do we attract the millennials. Generation Z, we're seeing drinking much less alcohol than previous generations. People are looking for low alcohol products. There's an opportunity here perhaps for tea to meet this. Alternative intoxications, we're seeing products like cannabis being used in a kind of amended, modified way and appearing within food and drink. Waters, high-end waters, functional ingredients, kombucha is dominant and everywhere in the tea industry. And then sugar tax is impacting sugary drink sales. Showing you some of the images of products that are on the market now. These are a really innovative range of no alcohol products, one of which is a sparkling tea, so it's a wine alternative. It retails at $20 a bottle, contains no alcohol, and is based on tea. Beautiful product from Denmark, put together by a sommelier. and really innovative, and it shows you that people will pay for tea-based, no alcohol-based products for health. Secondly, the images below are all kombucha products, showing you the kind of products that we're getting, one of which, the far right, is the Starbucks range kombucha, which is 6 SKUs recently launched. Convenience is another trend which is impacting, I would say, impacting hot beverage sales, particularly when you look at the breakdown. The little chart there shows you hot drinks versus cold drinks consumed at home. And we can see that cold drinks are marginally, well, flat, plus 0.4%. Hot drinks are down 3%. It's not just Europe, it's a cross-world trend, I would say. When you look at the numbers, more time is being spent outside on the go, and that's impacting hot tea sales. Cold brew tea bags are a big innovation and have launched within Europe in the last 12 months. Leading brands such as Twinings and Tetley's launched a range of cold brew products. They're designed to be put into a bottle and drunk on the go, really targeting the millennials that we've spoken about. The key point is they don't contain any tea, so they are infusion products. But reassuringly, Lipton's have just within the last 3 months launched a cold brew infusion, which is tea. So it's reassuring to see a brand using tea in a product like that, and I think that hopefully will prove very successful. We're seeing cold brew being used in fine dining scenes, in restaurants, by people even calling themselves tea sommeliers and using tea in a really elevated way, which is a great trend, using loose tea for that. Ready to drink, we know about brands such as Coca-Cola, Lipton's have been in this market for a while, but what's interesting within this sphere, I would say, is the Asian market products, which are what I would call pure cold brew products, where they're pure tea, unlike some of the others, which are water and sugar with less than 1% tea extract in it. So I think there's an opportunity, and we're starting to see some really high-end premium products coming into Europe and US, which are based on these pure tea cold brew products. Showing you the products that I've got. So we've got Lipton's, Twinings products are up there to show you. This is some of the cold brew techniques below. And then the final trend is sustainability. So no surprises here. We've spoken about this through some of the presentations today. Sustainability is very much leading a lot of brands' products that they're bringing onto market. And then all of this, so the work that Joseph and myself have done has come to the point of being here in East Africa, is to meet with key stakeholders in the industry and to get input and ask for feedback on the recommendations from the report. From the demand perspective, I see a couple of opportunities which are listed here. How we can use purple tea and promote it bigger and better, perhaps using extract techniques or alternative brewing techniques. There's some really magical things you can do with purple tea by changing the pH, squeezing lemon into it, it changes pink. That's not really been brought to life, I would say, in all markets. Is there an opportunity there to do that? Value adding in region or vacuum packing fresh teas. I think premiumization of tea within Europe really opens the door to this. What else can be done with vac pack teas here in East Africa? Brands will be crying out to make a point of difference by using techniques like this. Ready to drink and bottled cold brew, it's a higher challenge in terms of technology that would be required to set something up, but I think this is where the future is, and we've seen from the trends it's all about convenience and targeting the millennials. This is in the study as a kind of an area to take forward. How can we drive tea consumption here in East Africa? I think I went out to one of the bars and restaurants here in Kampala, which I think it was Java Cafe. They were serving amazing fruit juices, coffee. Where was the tea? It would have been a tea bag and a cup, but can't we do more cold brew? Can we not do more innovative ways of serving tea here in East Africa? Direct trade and engaging with buyers and linking buyers will be an obvious one. But yeah, thank you for your time. I think if we've got questions, we'll have time at the end, but thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we join and then we give them a round of applause because of the presentation? We are going to the next presentation, but before we go to the presentation, I want to recognize the presence amidst us of Executive Director of National Agricultural Advisory Services, Dr. Samuel Mugasi is with us. You are welcome to this Fourth African Tea Convention. Welcome. The next presentation is on transformation through global trade, the African tea, a case for small holders in Kenya. And giving us that presentation is Mr. Rionka Triopat, who is currently the Chief Executive Officer of Kenya Tea Development Agents Holdings Limited, managing over 67 tea factories. He has a long and varied experience in management, having served with companies in agriculture, manufacturing, mining, and financial services. He sits on the board of Family Bank and Standard Newspaper Group. He is a past chairman of East African Tea Trade Association and Director Tea Board of Kenya. He has a postgraduate degree, Masters in Marketing and Product Management from Greenfield Institute of Technology University in United Kingdom. He has a diploma in Chartered Institute of Marketing from United Kingdom. Could you join me to welcome Mr. Rionka for the presentation?
Thank you very much, Bwana Mugabe. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We have a large delegation from KTDA, led by our chairman and board members and senior managers. Perhaps they can just wave so that they can be recognized. I have had to make this presentation many times about the KTDA story, and I'm sure that those of us who have been in different forums have had a glimpse of the KTDA story. But if you can just picture the 50s in rural Kenya, the rural farmers practicing subsistence agriculture, no idea about tea, growing tea, or marketing tea, or managing factories. So that is the situation that we found ourselves in. And it's not very different from what we see in Uganda, Malawi, Tanzania. I think the history, what brings us together is a little tiff. I think we've been told about the trade wars between the US and China currently. I think those days, there was another trade war, but this time between China and the UK. And I think the Chinese refused to sell tea to the UK many years ago. So the British decided that they were going to introduce tea farming in Asia and in Africa. And that's how they came to Malawi, they came to Kenya, and they came to Uganda. That's how we started growing tea in the early 1900s, mainly in large plantation areas. So smallholders were not really growing tea or coffee. And in fact, it was not until the late 50s, early 60s, that the local people were allowed to grow tea. So the dilemma then was, how do you get people who have no idea about tea, no organizational ability, no idea about engineering and so on, to set up, to start growing a cash crop for export and do it in a sustainable manner? That is really the dilemma that was faced by the government then. And so the government was very, very much instrumental in setting up what is present-day KTDA to what it is today. Because you needed the expertise, the human expertise, you needed the capital to develop the road network, the factories, and so on. And so the government came in handy and was able to do that. Now, the financiers were there as well. We had the International Finance Corporation, the World Bank. They all came in, the CDC, to offer loans so that we could be able to develop the infrastructure required to be able to then develop the tea plantations that we have today. So in terms of our journey, it is actually key milestones. 57, we had our first tea factory, yes, at the foothills of Mount Kenya. It's called Ragati Tea Factory. The Special Crops Development Authority was created by the government because without an institution to drive the growth in the, to develop the growth in the tea, it wasn't going to be possible to do that because the farmers were not organized at that time. And then the KTDA, the authority, was established in 1964. And the next really key milestone was the privatization of KTDA in the year 2000. So all this time, the government was very instrumental in driving the KTDA. But in the 90s, then we had quite a bit of agitation by farmers themselves and the politicians who wanted the farmers to take their own destiny in their own hands and begin to manage their own factories. And that is really what gave, what we have today as the KTDA. So in the year 2000, the government privatized the Kenya Tea Development Authority and handed it over to farmers' representatives to manage. Now, that is quite interesting because then how do you then organize it in such a way that it is sustainable into the future? So that was the vision of the government, but the important thing was that you had to have technical and management expertise. You had to have, I'm sorry about that. You had to have technical and management expertise, sound governance. You know, governance is what brings many institutions down, not just institutions, but even countries. If you get it wrong, then you have big problems. So issue of governance for us is very, very important, the way that we are governed right from the buying centers. The buying center committees elect their own directors, their own members. In fact, we have now 3,200 buying centers across our smallholder sector, with about 16,000 committee members who are elected by the farmers. And these committee members ensure that at that particular buying center, all the issues to do with the quality of the tea, plucking, tea collection are handled by those committee members on behalf of the farmers. Then we have the tea factory company itself. And within the tea factory company, the farmers elect directors. There are currently about 6 directors that are elected from the catchment for each factory. And therefore, they are accountable to those farmers who have elected. So you have the farmers at the grassroots, you have the committee members, and then you have the directors at the factory, and then you have directors at the KTDA apex level, who are also elected by the directors at the factory level. So we are talking about over 324 directors at the 69 tea factories that we have, and 12 directors at the KTDA apex level, who also oversee the subsidiaries that KTDA has. So that is our structure. So KTDA, the farmers, we have the tea factories, and then we have the KTDA at the apex, and we also have the various subsidiary companies that we have created along the tea value chain to offer various services to the tea farmers. And that is one of the subsidiaries of KTDA is the KTDA Management Services, the one on the left there. And this particular subsidiary is supposed to provide management services to the tea factory on a contract, management contract that is signed with each individual tea factory company. And you can see clearly that these are the things that company has to do on behalf of the tea factory companies. Promote tea production and cultivation, collect and weigh the leaf, sell the tea, ensure that the money is accounted for, and ensure farmers are paid regularly, provide inputs such as fertilizer, and provide technical, financial, and managerial services to the farmers. Now, so that really is the background, and that is what is KTDA today. So I will very quickly take you through what we believe to be have been the achievements of the KTDA over all these years. But most importantly, if you look at that particular diagram, you will see that our farmers have very, very small pieces of land, unlike here in Uganda. We are told there's a lot of land. Somebody has 40 acres or something. So the average size in Kenya for the smallholder tea farmers is half an acre. 70% of our farmers have got just half an acre and below. And in fact, when you take it to 1 acre, it is 90%. 90% have got 1 acre and below. So these are really small-scale tea farmers. So unless you have a very organized structure that takes advantage of economies of scale to be able to provide the services, whether it is leaf collection, whether it's accounting, selling, input supply, it will be very difficult for those farmers with that kind of small-scale gardens to be able to survive. So that is really what the KTD is all about. It's about the centralized organization which is able to supply various services along the tea value chain efficiently. And with that kind of structure, this is what we have been able to achieve. In 1964, we had only about 3,000 hectares under tea. And so we have grown that over the years, and as we speak today, we have about 140,000 hectares under tea by smallholder tea farmers. So the KTDA has been able to execute its mandate to develop tea quite considerably, if you can see that kind of development. Number of farmers, at 64 we had just about 20,000 farmers, and we've been able to grow that today to about over 600,000 tea farmers. And to be able to serve these farmers and to process this leaf, we have had to put up factories, and that is where the challenge is, because you need financing to be able to put up all these factories so that you can provide the farmers with the right, with the processing capacity to be able to process this leaf. So we have 69 factories today, and so it has been quite successful in developing these factories. Now, in terms of green leaf, so you can see that green leaf has increased quite considerably over the years. I think we have been able to hit the 1.2 billion kilo mark in 2016. And so we have been pretty successful in what we have set out to do. I know now we don't want to talk about more tea. We want to talk about value for the tea that you have. But that was our mandate, and we have executed it, and we have grown it to the where it has been. Now, luckily, tea consumption, though it has been growing slower than the production, it's been growing at about 3.5%, while production has been growing at 4.5%. So we are able to serve our markets. Now, one of the other things that we did is that we went for quality tea production, 2 leaves and a bud. And we have been very, very strict in ensuring that our farmers comply to that quality requirement, because this is what our consumers in Pakistan, in the UK, and elsewhere in the world, this is what they want. So we have produced a tea, but pretty good quality tea so far in terms of the plucking standard and the processing of the leaf itself. So we have been able to produce quite a bit of tea, over 200 million kilos of made tea consistently, apart from the 2017. That one is, you can see there was a drought during that time, and therefore, and some pretty decent prices over the years. So if you see that graph over there, in almost 5 years out of 7, we have been able to get an average price of $3 per kilo of made tea. In 2014, we went down to $2.40 because of a supply of the market. And I think this 2019, perhaps we'll be seeing the similar situation as 2014, again because of a supply of tea in the market. We've all been talking about it, so we are expecting that it's going to be a difficult year for us. That is the turnover of our tea. I think the best we have had so far is 85 billion Kenya shillings in a particular year. But if you look at what we have been able to pay our to raise for our farmers since privatization 19 years ago, is close to 1 trillion Kenya shillings in terms of turnover. And this, out of this, about 75% of that money has gone directly to the farmers. And you'll be able to see that in most years we've been able to deliver 75% return to the farmer. Apart from the 2014 that I talked about, when the return was 67% because of the factors that I have explained. And in 2019, you expect it perhaps to be in the same in the same range. Those are our key markets. Pakistan specifically is a very good market. They appreciate the kind of quality that we produce. And so far, they have been able to pay a decent price for that tea. The UK has also been our good market. And then we have other markets, the emerging markets such as Russia, Iran, and so on. This is our first tea factory, Ragati. It still stands today. We have modernized a little bit, but then we have gone on to build even more modern factories. So most of our factories are modern because we have built them in the last couple of years. And you'll be able to see that they are pretty well designed, modern machinery, a very clean environment to be able to then supply tea to our various markets. One of the big issues that we have is extension services. And this is very important for farmers to be able to understand the issues of tea, how to pluck tea, how to make, to do the right husbandry. And I think some presenters have talked about what we are doing with them to ensure that the farmers are able to prune properly, infill properly, and also tip and pluck tea. So we have had a lot of collaboration with various of our partners to be able to ensure that we do this throughout our factories. But we've also been asking our farmers to diversify. We don't want them just to rely on tea because sometimes tea fortunes can go down. And so we encourage them to have some kitchen garden, to have some livestock, whether for beef or milk, and so on. And this has been quite successful. Keep chicken and things like those. It's because on 1 acre of land, you cannot really rely on that for all your needs. So this is one of the extension services that we have been offering to the farmers. The other important one is input supply. As you probably know, fertilizer application is very important in tea because of the plucking that we have to do. And over the years, we've been able to supply inputs to our farmers. We have been able to buy close to, I think this year we are buying about 90,000 metric tons of fertilizer. And because of economies of scale that I talked about, we're able to get quite good prices, which helps the farmer to reduce the cost of production. So you can see that in most of the years, 2016 to 2018, we have been able to get fertilizers at less than 2,000 shillings for a 50-kilo bag. Whereas in the market, it's probably 30-40% more. So that's one of the other services that we've been able to offer our farmers using our type of structure. Now, we've all talked about energy and the challenges of energy. And so we have taken the step to ensure that we develop our own wood fuel plantations. And as we speak, we have about 20,000 acres of land on which we have planted about 15,000 acres to be able to, in future, get wood fuel from our own plantations. So we have all these, so we are doing something about environment. We are very serious about the environment because we know that unless we're able to develop our own fuel supply, you will run into problems in the future. Now, I won't go too much into the subsidiaries, but each subsidiary plays a very specific role along our value chain. I talked about the management services, which manages the factories. I talked about we have the chai trading, which does the warehousing of our teas in Mombasa. It does trading. It does logistics, clearing and forwarding. We have an insurance brokerage company, which takes care of all our insurance needs, including micro-insurance. We have a microfinance company, which ensures that our farmers can get easy access to credit, because normally the challenge with the small farmers, if you ask them for title deeds and things like those, it will take a long time, if ever, for them to get anything. So through our microfinance company, they just have their pay slip, which shows that they have delivered leaf to the factory, and they're able to get the money that they require to pay fees or do whatever it is that they need to do. We have gone into power generation. Energy, electricity is a major cost of production in our operations. And long time ago, we didn't have a lot of hope that the power or electricity will come down. So we have developed our own hydro projects where we will feed the electricity to our factories. And if we have any surplus, we will sell it to the national grid. And then we have Ketepa, you've seen it out there, our value addition company. We are also producing machinery for our factories. We have set up a company that will be able to fabricate and manufacture tea machineries for our factories and also for the region. And of course, we have a foundation that helps us in corporate social responsibility. So very quickly, that is the microfinance company. In 2018, we were able to lend to the farmers close to 5 billion Kenya shillings through this subsidiary. About over 160,000 farmers have benefited from this subsidiary in terms of being able to access loans very, very easily. Then we have the Majani Insurance Brokers, which has got about 175,000 farmers who have got access to microinsurance so that they are able to have insurance for themselves if they fall sick and so on and so forth. So we have this subsidiary which has been able to do that for us. As I mentioned, chai trading, if you have any teas to warehouse, we have got close to 1 million square feet of warehousing space in Mombasa, half of which we own, so that we're able then to warehouse most of our teas. And I'm sure Charles is here trying to get a few customers to warehouse teas with us. We have the latest facilities. We have racking facilities, so your tea is very, very well taken care of and very well kept in our facilities. The power company, I won't dwell very much. This is one company that is operational, 5.8 megawatts in Nyeri. It's already operational. We have another 1 megawatt, 5.6 megawatts. All these are already operational, and others are in various stages of development, so that we'll probably be able to produce about 40 megawatts of electricity in probably in 2 years' time, so that we'll be quite self-sufficient in our factories. This is the facility I'm talking about, which will be of use also in the region, that if you want to be able to fabricate certain machineries here at home, because we must also be able to develop our industries. If we keep on importing everything from China, how will you ever develop your own industrial base? So we have gone ahead and we have equipped the facility with the latest machinery, and today we are able to fabricate certain machineries for our factories. For example, I think we've done some dryers, so you don't have to go very far. If you need dryers, you just come to us and we'll be able to do that. And that is Ketepa and the foundation. So that really is the KTDA structure, ensuring that you have proper governance, that farmers elect their own representatives so that they are accountable to those farmers, and that you invest along the value chain to ensure that various services that are required by the farmers are supplied within that value chain. And so it is all very good. However, like every one of us, we have challenges, and I don't think that I need to go too much into it. We've discussed them in detail. So we also face the same challenges, and especially about the reduction in farm sizes. That is really going to be a big challenge for us, because if it goes below half an acre to quarter to an eighth of an acre, it becomes very difficult to sustain that kind of a business. The other, of course, major issue is climate change, which has had a lot of impact in our business of late. And so in the 20 minutes I've been given, that is all I could present. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause to the CEO, KTDA, for the great work being done and the sustainability of the tea as we diversify in the global trade. We are going to go to the next presenter as a program. That is an overview of the dynamic regulatory environment in the tea sector, in the industry, the case for Kenya and India. And the first presenter is Losme Owino. She has a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry, Masters in Business Administration, in Marketing and Strategic Management from Nairobi University. She is a Chartered Marketer with the Chartered Institute of Marketing UK, a member of the Marketing Society of Kenya, She is also a member of the Chartered Management Institute and currently working as a postgraduate diploma course on competitive packaging with respect to supportive legislation. She has a wide experience in market research, analysis, and product development over a period of more than 20 years in pharmaceutical, beverage, and public sector. She is currently the manager, market research and production development at the Agriculture and Food Authority Tea Directorate. She will be presenting on the dynamic regulatory environment in the tea sector. Join me to welcome Rosemary Owino.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will endeavor to be very brief. My name is, as you have heard, and I will be taking us through the dynamic regulatory environment and trying to look at not just Kenya, but the global tea industry as well. I hope I'm doing the right thing. Is it? Okay. In my presentation, we'll be looking at the development of the Kenya tea industry, the global tea situation very briefly, roles and the levels of regulation, the challenges in both self and legislative regulation, and key observations and conclusion. Now, for purposes of this presentation, when we talk of self-regulation, we mean industry regulation, that is with respect to the tea sector. And legislative regulation will be referring to regulation that comes as a result of various acts of parliament. That is just a brief on the Agriculture and Food Authority. That is whom we are, that is what we are. We operate under the AFA Act, which consolidates the laws on regulation and promotion of agriculture and makes provision for the respective roles for both the national and the county governments in our country. So that is where we derive our regulations, the legislative regulations. That is just our mandate. And if we look at the development of the Kenya tea industry, from 1999 till present, we will realize that the industry has grown from what was then probably medium-sized to now. Our industry is growing. Looking at hectareage, in 1999, that is where we are, 118, 582 hectares. And now in 2018, there is almost a 49.4% increase. Call it 50% increase in acreage. Looking at our exports, again, from 241,000 to almost 474,000 in 2018. That represents another 49%, almost 50. So you can see acreage and exports is growing more or less concurrently. Looking at local consumption again, from 1999 to 2018, there is a significant growth in the figures. As you can see, if you calculate, you'll see it's almost 72% increase. What we are saying in a nutshell is the industry is growing. Looking at the industry players, if you look at the producers we had in 2012 and those we have in 2018, I'm just highlighting where there has been significant growth. Tea buyers and exporters and tea packers, you'll realize that the industry is expanding. The number of players coming into the industry are also growing. And this therefore means that the same is also cascaded into the global situation. Looking at supply and consumption situation, and why I've chosen to put these slides is the situation for tea is a unique one. It is maybe one or among the very few products where we are trying to battle with production. In our country, in Kenya, most of the commodities and the agricultural commodities, we are trying to look at how we can increase production, how we can be able to meet supply, how we can be able to encourage supply and meet the demand, both for our domestic and international markets. But for tea, the story and the narrative all over is how can we try to manage the production and especially of black CTC tea. So if we look at that, we'll find that our global CTC production 2014 to 2018 increased by almost 14.1%. Looking at the trends in production in millions, that is the global situation now. Between 2017 and 2018, there was an increase of almost 121 million kilograms. And of course, consumption, you can see, is not growing at the same rate. Production is growing at 14.1%, and consumption is 14.03%. So it means that production is growing, yes. Consumption is growing, yes, but not at a commensurate rate in terms of there is a gap. And therefore, that is what puts us in a very, very delicate balancing situation in the tea industry, not just in Kenya, but globally. Now, what does this mean? From when the industry began, when it was quite a small industry in the 1920s, to when the government liberalized the tea industry until now, we have more and more players. And for those of us who maybe have been keen on quality management, such sessions as TQM, Lean Six Sigma, you realize that whenever an industry expands, then there is more need to be keen to regulate it maybe in a more efficient way, because that is when quality of your product is under threat. When you're producing 30 million kilograms, it's different from when you're producing 490 million kilograms. Therefore, there is more need to be more keen on regulation of the tea industry now than it was probably 10 or more years ago. So regulations basically are rules and administrative codes issued by government agencies at all levels. Although they are not laws, regulations have the force of law since they are adopted under authority granted by statutes and often include penalties for violations. Self-regulation, on the other hand, which we said is industry regulation, occurs when an organization or industry regulates itself without external influence or intervention from external influences. So self-regulation, how are we able to achieve self-regulation? And I'm speaking with respect to the global tea industry, not just the Kenya situation. Of course, through voluntary standards organizations. These are the VSS. They are not statutory. For example, fair trade, which looks at have you fairly enumerated the producer, the farmer. Ethical tea partnerships, we heard about them this morning. Rainforest alliances. These encourage self-regulation for the industry because they are not mandated, but they are encouraged. Therefore, the industry, as it strives to achieve this, then of course they are self-regulating themselves. Of course, then you also have industry codes of ethics, which are prescribed by the various industry associations, which also have their own trading and operating rules. And depending also on the size of the industry, many times you'll find that you have gentlemen's agreements, which also is a form of self-regulation where you peer check one another within the industry. The advantages of self-regulation, of course, is the knowledge and expertise of all parties are used more efficiently, flexible and adaptable, lower regulatory burden on business, more commitment, pride and loyalty within a profession or industry, such as happens so much within our Kenya situation, lower cost to the states because then we don't pump in too much resources on regulation, and of course the market is able to work better. However, we also have legislative regulation, and here we borrow more from the acts of parliament. Our regulations, and this presentation comes at a time when in Kenya we are actually reviewing our regulations, which have to be reviewed, which has to be done every 10 years. After every 10 years, we have to relook, regulations become obsolete and we have to develop new ones. So the Act of Parliament is where we derive our tea regulation, and that is from the AFA Act. While doing so, of course, we recognize that we work in a multilateral environment, and therefore some of the things that we are agreed at multilateral levels also will find their way into our regulations because we are dealing with an export commodity. So why governments regulate, of course, they are to have a common trading language, facilitate fair international trade, avoid bad quality products to the markets, and also producers, to guide producers to meet the market requirements. It also, amongst other things, encourages high production and removes technical barriers to trade. Now, the reason why we will come in as governments to be able to regulate the industry is because you'll realize that even in self-regulation, many times they will focus more on one part of the value chain heavily and not on the other side of the value chain. ETP maybe will most likely look at the producer part of the value chain. So is fair trade. But how about these other sections which are not regulated, which nobody is really checking on them? That is where the government comes in. Now the challenges in both self and legislative regulation is, I got this slide somebody sent me on WhatsApp. I don't know that some of us saw it about 2 days ago, is that nobody likes to be regulated. Whenever we introduce any layer of regulation, especially in Kenya, it is always faced with some level of resistance, depending on where your interests lie. But we fail to note that regulation is good because it adds to the beauty. This one was addressing with the females, and we took it positively, that she believed that this is freedom, but she did not know that she had lost her security, pride, and happiness. A silent message to the modern females. So the tortoise shell maybe is such a burden to the tortoise and really looks forward to coming out of it. But when you come out of the regulatory framework, there's a lot that you lose in as much as you feel that you are enjoying a lot of freedom. So many people don't like being regulated, but it is what adds to the beauty of the industry. Most of the voluntary standards or certifications will concentrate on sections of the value chain where their interests are. They can be consumer-driven and not producer-driven, or vice versa. For example, when ETP comes and says we want to look into what you are doing, it is not us who said come and look at what you are doing. They're saying the consumer wants to know whether you're taking care of the environment, whether you are fairly enumerating the farmer, whether you are contributing towards the circular economy right now, of reuse, reduce, and recycle. They are not holistically or objectively looking into the interests of the other sections of the value chain, and of course they have additional costs to the producers, not to the consumers, but actually to the producers. My apologies for that. And legislative regulation, where we sit as a regulator, it's also viewed as bureaucratic and a barrier to conducting business, and at the same time it is difficult to harmonize across the varied interests of our stakeholders. In Kenya, for example, we are in the process of doing regulations, and this is the process that we are following. First of all, we come up with the act, then consult with the value chain players. We have 2 levels of government. We have the county, we have the country government, the national government, and then hold several meetings with both the counties and the Council of Governors, conduct an impact assessment, and then have validation forums. By the time you are through with all this, you'll find that all stakeholders are pulling the blankets on their own side. So coming up with a common position becomes very, very, very hard. However, having said that, what we need to note is that the regulatory space in the tea industry will continue to expand, both at self and at national level. And this is considering the expansion in both production, the markets, the number of players attracted into the industry, with emphasis on diversification, changing consumer lifestyles and segments. So what we're saying is that self-regulation and national regulation will definitely have to continue, given that our industry is expanding. And self-regulation will help you to get access to the consumer. Once your product is in the UK, we've been given an elaborate study of that market. But once your product is there, the only way it can get acceptance is once you have these voluntary standards certifications, because the consumer will not take it. However, how will your product get into that market? It is once you have met the national regulations which encompass the international regulations and requirements also. So both of them play a complementary role. Legislative regulation will get you to the markets, while self-regulation will help you gain access to the consumer, because the consumers are becoming more aware about quality, safety, and ethical issues such as, did you use child labor in producing this product or not? And that is where now the catch is once you are in the market. So regulations both at industry and legislative level should adopt a bottom-up approach by encompassing all the stakeholder views. This will enable both levels to assess whether the same is causing a facilitative role to trading or introducing non-tariff barriers that may also increase costs to segment the value chain. Regulations have to keep being reviewed every now and then. In fact, like in Kenya now, we are saying 10 years may be too long to review regulations. Have periodic reviews, because regulations are a living document. And also for the voluntary standards organization, they also have to come up with a way in which they are not now a barrier or adding costs to the producers, that they can be able to access the market at a more competitive cost. And that is the end. Thank you.
Another round of appreciation to Rosemary. I'm sure the Ugandan delegates would have liked to continue hearing this presentation, because next week you are validating a policy, comprehensive tea policy in the country. I think the engagement can continue with Rosemary over lunch. We have experience from India, Tea Board of India, just 5 minutes, because we are just running out of time. You come and present this. Allow me to invite the Tea Board of India to present the speaker.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, friends. I bring with me the greetings and the best wishes for the Africa Tea Convention from the Government of India. All the very best. Can I have the presentation, please? The commercial tea cultivation in India started with a regulatory mechanism. It was an introduced crop. The tea in India was an introduced crop. So there were a lot of regulations, including the planting permits, factories, permission, TMCO, and quite a lot of regulations to start with. Can I have the presentation, please? Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to take you through the brief history of and the interesting facts about Indian tea. Many of you, this is all available in the public domain, many of you may be aware of it. I only say that the birth of Indian tea with Major Robert Bruce came to know about the existence of wild tea growing in the Assam. The first public tea auction held in India is in 1861. I'm not going to take all the facts and I'm not going to read through it. The instant tea was manufactured in 1968 and the vacuum packing technology was introduced in 1987. CTC tea has come into force in 1932. In 2016, we introduced the Pan-India auction, and 2017 e-settlement process successfully implemented in the e-auction platform. And recently we have started a mobile app for the small tea growers which will be connecting the farmers through the auction process. The historical year 1964, India was boasting of being the world's largest producer, consumer and exporter of black tea. In 1965, India slipped to second position. In 92, China became the second largest exporter. And since then, India has been maintaining fourth position at 14% behind Kenya, which is 23%, China is 20%, and Sri Lanka is 15% during year 2017. This is the graphical presentation of India is the second largest producer and production-wise second after China, area-wise and production-wise. We produce around 1,339 million kilos of tea, black tea, most of it, 95% of it, and 14% is the total exports. I am just presenting, this is a very important development which in India, it's a decadal growth of tea in India. If you look at the chart, in 1950s we were producing around 278 million and it was an export-oriented crop and we were exporting around 201 million kilos. At the same time, 2018, our production has gone up to 1,339 million kilos, 48% of it coming from the small grower sector. And our exports have more or less remained around 200 million, around 256 million, and the domestic consumption has gone substantially higher at 1,107 million. So this is how from an export-oriented crop which was introduced in India in 18th century has become a consuming country and the largest consuming, tea consuming. It's a domestic-oriented industry from an export-oriented industry. As I said, there are a lot of regulations which, as it was an introduced crop, so the planting permits need to be taken by the farmers before they start farming growing the tea. And there are about 585 big growers, that means large plantations more than 100 hectares. And there are around 2 lakh small growers. And the government regulates the tea small grower price by a small grower price sharing formula. About 48% of the production is contributed by the small growers. And as I said, there are Tea Marketing Control Order, Food Safety Standards Authority of India, Standard TMCU. There are about 926 estate factories and 679 bottle factories. By bottle factory, what I mean is those who are sourcing, those who do not have a plantation of their own, they source their entire leaf from small growers. As a part of regulation, we have introduced a plant protection code for regulating the MRL levels and good agricultural practices for regulating the productions. Most of the manufacturing units adopt sustainability certificates, and we also conduct auctions under e-auction platform, which is done only by the government through T-board. There is a tea warehouse control order. The warehouse only can store with the approval of the T-board, and tea waste control order. And we also manage the logos, which are GI and other logos which are in various tea growing regions. Almost 50% of the tea produced is sold through our public auction. We have a pan-India e-auction, I have told you, and my payment gateway system has been instituted. Tea which are sold through auction centers are fully governed by the tax structures of the GST, which was in place recently. There is a tea distribution and export control order, which controls the export of tea from India. And there are tea councils, which takes care of the quality of the tea which is exported. There are certain new initiatives which are also governed by the regulations. A mobile app just capture the production and logistics arrangements with the grower to the factory and factory to the auction. Someone was asking about artificial intelligence. We are using the artificial intelligence, QR code and blockchain applications for doing this. The value addition is a new initiative we are taking that is also by regulation. And one of the major thing which we are implementing now is the traceability. So more and more the buyers are wanting to be a traceable tea which is traceable. So for Darjeeling certificate of origin, we are doing the traceability certification system, and we will be expanding it to the all tea which is produced. Implementation of new export strategy, it is part of a regulation, and also the food safety compliance. So we are slowly moving from production to the food safety issues and the quality regulation, and marketing and exports. E-auction for transparency of e-auction auctioning systems, e-governance for disseminating the services to stakeholders. And last week we signed an agreement with auction system called Metal Junction, Jorat auction platform. This will be a new auction system where the logistics and third-party testing of tea will be done. So to sum up, we are slowly moving towards the regulation of planting permit, allowing the factory licensing, towards the quality regulations like focus on uniform standards and focus on FSSAI and MRL regulations. There are increasing demand to deregulate certain aspects like planting permits and licensing. The government is planning to do that. And as I speak today we had our board meeting. They are suggesting, they are taking up an agenda whether to have 100% dust auction or not. So there was a demand by the industry, producing industry, that the tea has to be 100% auction, as in the case of Sri Lanka. But they are debating on it, so they will be deciding how to move forward. Government on the ease of doing business policy trying to optimize controls. Not that we will take the controls away, but there will be controls which will be optimized. Focus on uniform standards and full traceability of GI tag for domestic and international consumers. Full traceability will ensure consumer preferences like introduction of bar, QR code, etc., and improved packaging standards To sum up, I would say that we are moving from the licensing Raj towards regulation which will be more friendly, and it will ensure the quality and MRL FSSAI standards of the tea. Thank you very much.
Let us appreciate once again our presenter from India for that. Now we are going to go into question-answer session, which will take about 5 minutes, and we'll break for lunch. And we know we have had several presentations. We heard about business support and trade facilitation. We had improving market access for Eastern Africa through enhancing export competitiveness. We had African tea transformation through global trade, a case for smallholders in Kenya, and then the dynamic regulatory environment. We shall have microphones move around, take a set of questions, three, and then we break for lunch before we do the presentation of gifts. So where is the microphone? We start from this side. Can you give, in that order, microphone? We shall. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chairman UTA. My questions go to Madam Angela, I think. Innovate to survive. When she said that word, or those words, I was very excited. And what should we do? As I hope you already know enough about us, about our struggles with the current auction in Mombasa, and what do we do with these CTC black teas to survive, and what are our chances? Two, still to Angela, of course, what are the possibilities of partnerships with people who are into specialty teas and kombucha, and would such arrangements be beneficial to us, the producers at farm levels? Three, last but hopefully not least, Pepsi Cola, Coca-Cola. It seems it is entering into our territory, and very soon it's going to eat our lunch. They may get us out of business because these guys are very serious. They don't joke. What are our chances of surviving, and what should we do to try to rein Coca-Cola and Pepsi Cola back, and we take over that sector of our tea, which we've been with all these years? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take it down. Kenneth Mtabaruka, there. Then you go this side, and then we shall get somebody from extreme left. Kenneth Mtabaruka. Is there, the microphone, down. Kenneth is there, Mtabaruka is there. Yeah, we shall come.
Yes, thank you very much. My first question is from the issue of corporate governance. I think it's addressed to the Chief Executive Officer of KTDA. We have the known corporate governance practice that a very good board should have the ultimate balance of executive directors, non-executive directors, and a majority of independent non-executive directors. I know our trend in our smallholder factory boards is that we have just one uniform set of majority non-executive directors. How do we reconcile that with our drive for governance? My second question is to the gentleman from Solidaridad. We've been pushing around this saying that we have 200,000 hectares potential for tea in Uganda. Do we have a solid report on this, or it's based on estimates? If we have a solid report on this, I would recommend that it's made available to the public to guide future development of the tea industry, because we have a challenge of people joining the industry, going to areas that are already crowded and creating unnecessary competition. Thank you.
Let us have one question per person. Can we have this side? Where's the microphone? There was a hand in extreme. There is the lady in the extreme.
My question goes to CEO KTDA, and it's how have you managed to produce the quality tea consistently, and especially how have you managed to engage farmers towards this production of quality tea? Then another question is about the inputs you are giving the farmers. Are they free, subsidized? And if they are subsidized and not free, how do you manage the recovery process?
Can you have this law here? There's the lady there. Then you'll go behind. Then we go this side. Then we shall have the panelists to respond, and we take another round. Just 5 minutes, and we conclude.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is a compliment to CEO KTDA Factories. I was really thrilled and touched. And I was telling my neighbor Alfred here that after this, I think I should go to Kenya. It's where I belong. But knowing that I'm so patriotic, I really can't go to Kenya, but we need to copy. We need to benchmark. Ugandan tea growers, can we clap for KTDA? Seriously, UTHA, before this year ends, a team of Ugandan tea producers who should go to KTDA and benchmark and learn. I looked at the list of subsidiary projects. That is what we need. We are not yet there. We are actually lucky that we are still surviving as Ugandan tea producers.
You have made your point. You have made your point. Please make sure you subscribe so that I am able to take you to Kenya. Go down. You have made your point. Here, bring it in front here, then we end here, and then we... Yeah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My comments to a question is responding on Madame Owino's presentation. I realized that you mentioned a bit on the dynamic regulatory environment. So my suggestion is on forging partnership between the voluntary standards and government to come up with regulations or standards that can, look at the access to the market. Of course, I come from the Rainforest Alliance, but I'm not looking at trying to blow the trumpet of the certification. But my suggestion would look more on how do we leverage on the best practices of these certifications and traceability.
One question, please, because we are one question, please. Bring it here. So one question. That's one question.
It's on forging partnership between the legislations, government, and the voluntary standards. Thank you.
Could we have the microphone? The gentleman already has it. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Fred. My question goes to Madam Angela Price. You showed us a graph here, and it was showing volumes have gone down, and yet the value has gone up by 8%. And when I looked at all those big brands, they are all big players on the auction, and they are members of the ETHCO Tea Partnership. What do they think about the drop in prices at Mombasa, and yet the retail price on the European market is still going up?
Thank you. The microphone, I think, who has it? Then you pass it on to Caesar, and then the last one will be,
Yeah, my name is Peter Kanyago from KTDA. I would like the gentleman from the Tea Board of India to elaborate more on mobile app to the small-scale tea farmers, and also on the e-auction, how they are settling the system. Please let me comment on plantations. I hear Uganda wants to plant more teas, and we know the prices are very low. I'm thinking that we as a sector in this region, we should regulate the plantation of teas so that we can control the amount of teas in the market. After all, we are the largest exporters, and if we keep on granting more teas, we are increasing the supply, and the demand is not as big as that. So we should have self-regulation as producers to regulate how much teas we are planting. Thank you.
You have made your point, Caesar. We have Caesar and then a gentleman behind Caesar. Then we have our panelists to respond.
Thank you very much. My question goes to the director, Thibaut Ovidia. What triggered the turnaround from India being an export-oriented country to a consumer-oriented country? We would like to know what was the trigger point and when.
Yeah, okay. That will be the last, and then we have panelists responding.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Sam Otieno from Choice Tea Brokers in Mombasa. My question goes to our presenter from India. We would like to know what drove you into the e-auction, and if you have e-auction in all your auction centers, and what are the challenges you've experienced or the benefits you have experienced through the e-auction. And you've just said that you are having a board meeting to discuss if all teas should go through the auction. Why is this? What's the reason for this? And lastly, does your government have provide any incentives to farmers? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can I have my panelists, starting with Semyaro, in the order you presented? After you have responded to your questions, then, yeah, you can start.
Thank you. I have one question, really. It's about the hectareage we have as a country. Solidaridad is seeking partnerships to actually profile and map so that we have the polygons of these suitable areas. Now, depending on who you are talking to, there will be an estimated hectareage using the agroecological zoning of the country. Some are doing some projections, and the others are using the soil pH, which means that tea has will grow in areas that are slightly acidic on a continuum of the pH between 4.5 and 5.5 there. But we know that the soils could be acidic simply because the bases have been washed out or leached, and because of that scenario, then you have that pH or soil conditions. So I would think we need partnerships to actually profile and map these suitable areas or agroecological zones, but also have the regulatory environment to see where the factories should be and the supply sheds, and also the fact that the higher quality teas have a linkage or a correlation with the altitude. I submit.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start with a question from Kenneth on corporate governance. Corporate governance is quite wide. It really is about how you govern the institution. And I think the composition of the board is just one of the components of a good corporate governance. In our case, we are farmers. The land tenure system in Africa is skewed to the males. The males are the ones who own the land. And so when it comes to electing directors into the institutions, the people who own the land are the ones who are eligible to be voted in. So yes, we do have a skew in terms of our gender representation of the boards, but what we have done, in line with our 2010 constitution, which talked about equality, we have introduced the position of independent gender directors in our factories. So a number of our factories have actually appointed the independent gender directors to the board. So that is one of the starting points. Now within KTDA itself, we have also appointed gender directors into our boards, in the KTDA Holdings Board. We have several directors in our subsidiaries who represent the gender component. Now, in terms of executive directors, yes, we do have them in all our companies and subsidiaries. We have executive directors, the independent directors, and then the executive directors. So it's a journey. We have made the first steps, and we'll continue to ensure that we make sure that we have a good board, a good corporate governance in our practices. The other question was asked by Rashida about how we continue to produce quality tea consistently. And I think the issue is about self-regulation, which we have been talking about here. So our farmers, I talked about how they are structured. They have buying centers where they have buying center committees. They elect their own buying center members. And these members are the ones who enforce the quality standards at the buying centers. So if as a farmer you bring bad leaf, they will turn you away. It's not even the managers. Before the managers come in, the farmers themselves will tell you off. So it is self-regulation, self-enforcement. And that really works, because then you're not forcing things down the people's throats. It's coming from the people themselves. That is very important. The issue of inputs, they are not free and they are not subsidized. It is government which subsidizes the fertilizer. But because of our economies of scale, as I mentioned, we are able to buy fertilizer in bulk. So the price is quite good. It's actually 30 to 40% lower than the market price. So that is a benefit the farmers get, but we do not subsidize. Now what farmers do is that they pay slowly for this fertilizer. They make deductions every month from their tea deliveries. So at the end of the year, we recover the balance. So the farmers don't feel the very much the burden of this fertilizer. I think the last one was a compliment from Adrian. Thank you for the compliment. And you're welcome to Kenya, to Benchmark. And we'll also would want to come to Uganda. And if we can help in any particular way, we'd be happy to do that. We went to Rwanda for 2.5 years. They asked us to help them to introduce a smallholder model in Rwanda. So we went there, Shagasha and Mulindi, and we worked with them for 2.5 years. And we'll be happy to do the same in Uganda if we are invited. Thank you.
Angelo, you have 2 questions?
Thank you. So the first question about innovation, really, and how to innovate to survive. What should we do? I think it starts with looking. I thought the Indian Tea Board presentation highlighted this particularly, where India has gone from a purely export market to a huge domestic market. So I would say the opportunity to look local is huge, and to grow domestic consumption here. I think when you're considering that, it's about not losing sight of who the customers are, so creating a brand that works for the millennials, and also tapping into the tourist industry here and really elevating tea and premiumizing tea. So when we look into what's happening in Europe and the US, people are working with tea in a very kind of high-end way, and loose tea is prevalent. So I would say the opportunities are big there. I think also not losing sight of who your customer are and what they want. So considering that, and we had a really interesting conversation, myself and the doctor from the Tea Research Centre, regarding the green tea clone that's used here in particularly in Kenya, and talking about green teas from China and what the competition is for green tea on the world market versus East African green tea. And from a taste perspective, they're quite different products because of the varietal of tea bush which is used. So I think further thought about that and further benchmarking, we're definitely seeing big growth in green teas globally. So I think it's considering the green tea production that is made here in conjunction with the taste profile and making sure that works. Opportunities for partnerships, I would say yes. The project that I'm working on at the moment is Markup, which specifically looks at enabling market access for producers to Europe. Outside of that, I don't know what the answer is with how to partner with, say, bottling companies and that kind of thing. But in terms of partnerships with European buyers, that's the whole objective of this project for tea growers. Thirdly, PepsiCo and Coca-Cola, how do we rein them back? I would see it partly as an advantage that they're trying to enter our tea market because they've got big pockets and they are spending a huge amount of money on advertising. When you look at recent launches in the last few months back in Europe, the two big brands, so Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, they've launched, there's a brand called Foo's Tea, which is everywhere, so billboards are everywhere, and the story of tea is everywhere, so in some aspects that can be considered to be an advantage because it gets the message of tea out. I would say the technology required to bottle and produce those products is not small, so I appreciate that. I would say then thank you for the next question, which was interesting. Yeah, good question. Prices are low in the auction, and yet retail prices are shown from the graphs to be going up. So volume is down 10%, value is up 8%. How can that be? And it's to do with the product mix. So when you look at what green teas and herbal and fruit products are doing, they're growing. So herbal and fruits are up 33%, green teas up 58%. And the cost of those products is roughly 3 times higher than a CTC normal tea. So it's the product mix within it that's pushing the prices up. And that was all. Thank you.
Thank you. Rosemary, anything? And followed by...
I want to respond to the comments by my sister behind there. I missed your name. She asked about having a partnership between the voluntary certifications and market access. The partnership already exists, as it were, in terms of we recognize as a government that they play a very key role in terms of self-regulating the industry and also acceptance of the product by the consumer. When it comes to market access, you'll realize that trade across the borders is it involves multilateral trade where it brings together governments, 2, 3, 4 governments. And of course, you know, the rule of the game is clearing of your exports, accepting of your exports. You look at statutory bodies such as Quality Standards Body, Kenya Bureau of Standards, for example, in Kenya, plant protection bodies, Food and Drug Administration. But these are the ones that trade across borders will recognize from their sister or counterpart companies in both the destination and the exporting market. So the partnership already is there, but when it comes to now accessing the markets, international markets, of course that now has to be played by government to government.
Then finally, experiences from India.
On the mobile app, they're asking. This is the card which we distribute to the farmers. It's a QR code based card, and this card can be scanned through a mobile and he can download the app. So these are all the benefits which will arise out of the mobile app. App would disseminate useful information on good agriculture practices, good manufacturing practices, green leaf price, plant protections, and what green leaf price, registration of small growers. We are linking the app to the small grower, the bottle factories, and also to the market. That is the second stage we are doing it, but basically we have launched these QR coded cards and the app in Assam. So there are green leaf agents, they also will be given a QR coded cards. So the entire chain traceability is possible, from which farmer, where the leaf is going, who is manufacturing, and how the tea arrives in the market. And on the e-auction, I have a presentation, but I am just showing you. You can, I can also discuss during the lunch hour in detail. I'm just giving you how the process works. This is a simple process. We now, from 40 days of the auction system, that is again an e-auction, we are now going in advance to 25 days to minimize the days of the auction, days of the sale process, from the production to the dispatch of tea. So this is how the new platform is going to work. Going towards the benefit, these are all the benefits of the all across the stakeholders. It's end-to-end digital solution, paperless document management, and buying and selling, clearing, settlement, delivery, everything is, including the payment to the stakeholders. Then the challenges, yes, we had some challenges in e-auction, but we have addressed it. Someone was asking about why 100% auction. The 100% auction was the aspiration of the producers, not all the producers, the majority of the producers. The producers wanted to try whether 100% auction will enable them to discovery of prices. So they are just suggesting, so we are putting towards our board whether they will agree it or not is a question to be, I mean, we have to wait and see today's board meeting. If they agree, yes, we will go for only dust auction, 100%, not the leaf. We have leaf and dust, so maybe 300 million of our production is leaf, dust. So whether we will put the whole dust in auction or not, we will know today evening. And about the incentives, yes, the government was providing a lot of incentives to the small growers in terms of production, in terms of replanting and all that. But the policies of the governments are changing. Slowly, we will not be able to provide incentives for the production side, but we will be concentrating on marketing and quality aspects. What triggers the consumption from export to consumption? See, as you all know, India, we drink tea with sugar and milk. The availability of milk and sugar, and slowly, it happened over a period of 50 years. If you look at it, in 1950s, we were consuming only very less, about 10 million kilos. From there, we have grown to 100 million, 1,000 million kilos in over a period of 60 years. So slowly and steadily, the taste of the tea has gone into the people of India, and they have started drinking more and more tea. And looking at that, there is an opportunity in every other non-tea drinking countries to introduce tea and make them drink more tea. Thank you. There is any more thing, I will be delighted to discuss it over lunch. I'm available. Thank you.
A very round of applause to our presenters for the good work done. Thank you so much. I am afraid we have little time left. We can't take more questions, but we are going to give gifts to our presenters here. And I will ask the Executive Director of National Agricultural Advisory Services, Dr. Samuel Mugasi, to come up, and Mr. Mudibo MD to arrange the gifts for our presenters, starting with Julius Semnyaro. The gift should be, you could stand up and receive your gifts. Gifts. Let us appreciate Julius Semnyaro for the gifts. Then we have Angela, and Joseph. I hope Mudibo you have enough. Angela is here. You get your gift. Let us appreciate Angela for the presentation. Thank you very much. Joseph. Thank you so much. Appreciate Joseph. The story of KTDA that moved the Ugandan delegates. This is in interest of Adrian. You come, the CEO of KTDA. Wonderful job done. We shall learn from that. Thank you. Rosemary, Owino, regulation. Very interesting presentation. Then Tea Board India. We will come. Yeah. Yes. Let us appreciate. You can receive. We will give it in the afternoon? Okay. You appreciate the executive director. Thanks so much. Let us appreciate ourselves for being attentive. This was really a very, very good presentation, and more is yet to come in the afternoon. So we are going to have a closing prayer, to pray for food. Our chaplain, Caesar, is here. Pray for the food. We will be here just in 1 hour's time. Don't miss the upcoming, very interesting papers that are going to be presented. Caesar, pray for us.
Will we stand? To you, O Lord, we thank you. We're going for a meal. We receive it with thanks. May it be of help to our bodies. In Jesus' name.
All these presentations will be put on your email. Make sure your email is correct and active, because we shall just forward the presentations on your email. Maybe other announcements?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are breaking at 1:25. So we'll start off the sessions at 2:25 precise, so that we finish in good time. Remember, we have the evening dinner, so we don't want to stretch too far. So 2:25 precise will start. Oh, you mean taking off? No, yours you can get to the head. The East African Tea Trade Association was founded in 1957, and this body was formed essentially to promote the interests of the tea trade in Africa. So here we have the producers of tea, we have the brokers. Next, we also are looking at the buyers and exporters of tea. The other key members are warehousemen and packers of tea. So from that dimension, you can see that as a body, as an organization, we've been able to have all these members served across the board.
Tea is an important cash crop for this country. It's the number one foreign exchange earner, and it is it actually provides a livelihood to almost 10% of this country's population. Therefore, I think that we are doing an important role in ensuring that the farmers can continue to be able to grow this tea profitably, and that there are factories to process this tea, which create employment for our people, and which create even further industries which supply various materials to the factories.
The total number of hectares of factory suppliers who supply green leaf to Maramba Tea Factory is about 1,600 hectares. We have been members of EATTA since the inception, and we have seen the benefits of working with EATT, because the rules that govern the tea trade is what has assisted the tea business to be what it is at the moment.
Over the years, we have been fetching favorable prices. It's only that once we started fetching very good prices, then production hit the roof, whereby most of the farmers were encouraged to produce tea because it was quite profitable. I believe the duty is upon us to find for newer and fresher market for these teas which we claim to be produced en masse.
The East African Tea Trade Association runs one of the largest auctions in the world. In fact, it is the only multi-origin tea auction whereby we are serving 9 countries in the African region. That is namely Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, DRC Congo, Madagascar, Mozambique, and Malawi. All these countries export their teas through Kenya, and importantly, their teas are brought to the auction for purposes of ensuring realizable competitive prices.
We have come from far, and as a tea industry, I would say we have done better than all the other agricultural-related products. We have organized ourselves. We have governed our systems. We have also even brought in skills, because we have imported a lot of skills from outside, where we are changing even how things are being done.
We are happy that EATTA has been able to provide this kind of service, and in addition, providing other services such as lobbying, whenever there are various issues, not just in Kenya but around the region, which impact on tea farmers.
We have about 70 active buyers currently, or over years, who have been quite active. We have new members who are joining. We have members who are there, but they're not very active, but they buy regularly. And within the 70 members, some of the members will trade locally, the local market within East Africa. Then others will be exporting direct to final destinations of their, where the market is. And we have others who actually are buyers, but they also own the brands.
The role of the buyer is to identify the preferred tea for that particular packer or that particular country, to be able to facilitate from identifying the quality and ensuring that the whole supply chain is up to the time the tea is put on the vessel for it to be going to where it's going to be consumed.
Once the tea comes from the farms, it is warehoused within our warehouses. We prepare the tea in terms of sampling so that the buyers get the samples. We ensure that the tea is released to the buyers upon payments. And we do not only end there, we also do breading, we do value addition, and we manage the entire shipment process, taking the tea to the port and ensuring that it reaches the final destination.
A broker needs to have the requisite number of employees who can taste tea and value tea. It is necessary as an applicant who wants to become a broker to be able to get business or to get confirmation from the producer to say that that company which is applying for membership has the knowledge in broking to be able to give a service.
If we were to remain as the preferred point of export of tea, one of the few areas that we've looked into is diversification of the product. We are currently producing most of our teas in CTC, but we are encouraging the farmer to diversify, to go to orthodox and also the green tea, which we feel that the market for green tea, especially even in Africa, is there. So, and we have seen inquiries coming through looking for green tea. So the future is that there is a potential growth on the green tea.
At the moment, as a country, we do very well on value-added products, particularly for exports. Locally, we're doing very well. We got a couple of companies which are doing for the local market. But the bulk of it goes out in bulk, which is not